I was on mute. Now I'm not. How's that? That sounds a little loud. Oh, I know why. How's that now? Now it's better. It was muffled inside the mask. Sorry about that. Hello, folks. Come on in. Those Thanksgiving weekends, it's very mellow here in the synagogue. And you folks come out this way, it's good to see you. I'm glad that you're able to join us. So our friends who are here in the room, our friends who are online, and we wish you all Shabbat Shalom. Hope you had a meaningful Thanksgiving and that it's been a good weekend thus far. We're going to invite you to turn to page 128. Begin with a song of welcoming. Hinei Ma Tov should be at the top of the page. Hinei ma tov u'ma na'im shevet achim gam yachad. Hinei ma tov u'ma na'im shevet achim gam yachad. Let's do that again. Hinei ma tov u'ma na'im shevet achim gam yachad. Hinei ma tov u'ma na'im shevet achim gam yachad. Hinei ma tov u'ma na'im shevet achim gam yachad. Hinei ma tov u'ma na'im shevet achim gam yachad. Hinei ma tov u'ma na'im shevet achim gam yachad. Hinei ma tov u'ma na'im shevet achim gam yachad. Beautiful. Let's turn back all the way to 120. And remember, if you have one of our thinner prayer books, one of the ones that say Shabbat on the spine, and if you see two page numbers, you'll be following the page number that's in blue brackets. So we're going to continue. Jeff is going to light our Shabbat lights. We are on 120. Shabbat Shalom. Thank you. We'll invite you to rise if you are able, friends. Let's turn the page to 123. We continue with our Kiddush. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kedeshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu בשבת קודשו, באהבה וברצון, הנחילנו, זיכרון למעשה וראשית, כי הוא יום תחילה למקראי קודש, זכר ליציאת מצרים. כי בנו בחרת ואותנו קידשת מכל העמים, ושבת קודשך באהבה וברצון הנחלתנו. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת. Amen. L'chaim. You can be seated. Again, let's turn to 128 in the middle of the page. ידיד נפשיו הרחמן, ידיד נפשיו הרחמן, משוכב דך אל רצונך, משוכב דך Yalalalayael Retzonecha. Let's do that again. Yedid nefesh. Yedid nefesh av harachaman. Yedid nefesh av harachaman. Mishochav decha. El retzonecha. משוכב דך ילללייל רצונך ירוץ עבדך כמו אייל ישתחווה אלי ילללייל מול הנדרך. ידיד נפש אב הרחמן, ידיד נפש אב הרחמן, משוכב דך אל רצונך, משוכב דך ילללייל רצונך. Page 138, Lecha Dodi. We return to Tzfat to join our mystics to welcome the Sabbath Queen. On 138 and 139, we begin with the first 5 stanzas. After the 5th one, we jump to the very last, and that's where many of us will share in a custom of turning and open and facing the open doors in the back of our sanctuary, and symbolically, we welcome the Sabbath bride into our midst. Page 138. Lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Shamo v'zacho b'diborecha rishmiyanu אל המיוחד אדוני אחד ושמו אחד ושם ולתפארת לתהילה. לך דודי לקראת כלה בני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת קלה, בני שבת נקבלה. לקראת שבת לכו ונלכה, כי מקור הברכה מראש מקדם נסוכה. סוף מעשה במחשבה תחילה, לך דודי לקראת קלה, בני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת קלה, בני שבת נקבלה. מקדש מלך עיר מלוכה, קומצאי מתוך ההפיכה, רב לך שבט בעמק הבחבר, הוא יחמול עלייך חמלה. לך דודי לקראת קלה, בני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת קלה, בני שבת נקבלה. התנערי מיפה קומי לבשי, בגדי תפארתך על יד בן ישי. בית הלך מקור ואל נפשי גאלה. לך דודי לקראת קלה, בני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת קלה, בני שבת נקבלה. התעוררי, התעוררי, כי בא אורך, קומי אורי, אורי, נורי, שיר דברי, כבוד אדוני עלייך נגלה. לך דודי לקראת קלה, בני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת קלה, בני שבת נקבלה. בואי ושלום תרד בעלה, גם בשמחה ובצהלה, תוך אמוני עם סגולה. בואי חלה, בואי חלה. לך דודי לקראת קלה, בני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת קלה, בני שבת נקבלה. You may be seated. Let's turn. Shalom Aleichem is on page 142. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon. Mi melech Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi melech Malachei Hamlachim, Kadosh Baruch Hu. Baruchuni l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi melech מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא. צאתכם לשלום, מלכי השלום, מלכי עליון. מי מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא. Page 144. יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, ועמד יברח חירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון וביומייכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, בגלה בגלה ובזמן קריב, ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך, לעולם ולעולמי עלמיה. יתברך, יתברך וישתבח, ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל, שמי תקודשה ברוך הוא לעילה, מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דאמירן בעלמא, ויאמרו אמן. 146. ברכו את אדוני המבורך, ברוך אדוני המבורך, ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד. Let's turn the page. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר בדברו מעריב ערבים, בחוכמה פותח שערים, ובתבונה משנה עתים, ומחליף את הזמנים, ומסדר את הכוכבים, במשמרותיהם ברקיע כרצונו. בורא יום ולילה, גולל אור מפני חושך, וחושך מפני אור. ומעביר יום ומביא לילה, ומבדיל בין יום ובין לילה, אדוני צבאות שמו. אל חי וקיים, תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד, ברוך אתה אדוני, המעריב ערבים. 151. As you taught Torah to those whose names I bear, teach me Torah too. Its mystery beckons, yet I struggle with its truth. You meant Torah for me. Did you mean the struggle for me too? Don't let me struggle alone. Help me to understand, to be wise, to listen, to know. Lead me into the mystery. Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael. 152. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. 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 Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto, Leolam Vaed. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto, Leolam Vaed. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. You may be seated. Let's turn the page. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'odecha ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavcha hayom al levavecha ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם לאות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם. אדוני אלוהיכם. Amen. Let's read on 157. We can read responsively. In a world torn by violence and pain, a world far from wholeness and peace, give us the courage to say, Adonai, there is one God in heaven and earth. The high heavens declare your glory. May earth reveal your justice and love. From bondage in Egypt we were delivered. At Sinai we bound ourselves to your way. Inspired by prophets and instructed by sages, time and again we overcame oppressive forces. Though our failings are many and our faults are great, it has been our glory to bear witness to our God, keeping alive in dark ages your vision of a world redeemed. Let us continue to work for the day when the nations will be one and at peace. Then shall we rejoice as Israel did, singing on the shores of the sea. 158. Yalai, 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 yalai. Yai lai ya la lai, yai la lai lai, ya la 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 lai. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh, norati lo osef ele, norati lo osef ele. מלכותך ראו בניך בוקע ים לפני משה זה אלינו ואמרו זה אלינו ואמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. ילאי 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 ילאי. Let's turn forward a couple of pages. Vishamru is on 162. Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. כי 6 ימים עשה אדוני, עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. Let's turn the page. We'll invite you to rise as we move into the tefillah together. Page 164. Adonai sifatai tiftach ufi yagid tilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei avoteinu ve'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, ve'Elohei Leah. Ha'el hagadol hagibor v'hanora el elyon, gomel chasadim tovim וקונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואמהות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה. מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם ועזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי הכל אתה רב להושיע, משיב הרוח ומוריד הגשם, מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומי דומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה לחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי הכל. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יעלוך סלע. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש. You may be seated. Let's read together on 175. Ever-present one, may we, your people Israel, be worthy in our deeds and our prayer, wherever we live, wherever we seek you, in this land, in Zion restored in all lands. You are our God, whom alone we serve in reverence. Baruch atah Adonai, she'otcha levadcha v'yira na'avod. On 177, let's continue together. God of goodness, we give thanks for the gift of life, wonder beyond words, for the awareness of soul, our light within, for the world around us so filled with beauty, for the richness of the earth which day by day sustains us. For all these and more, we offer our thanks. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha lecha na'eh lehodot. We turn the page. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Ki ata hu melech adom lechol hashalom. Ki ata hu melech adom lechol hashalom. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. V'tov beinecha livarech et Amcha Yisrael b'chol עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Tasim Leolam. Tasim Leolam. Let's take some time for our own personal prayer. If you'd like to follow in the Siddur, you can look at 179 through 181. Choose any reading that speaks to you to reflect upon, or just take some time for your own silent prayer. Ose shalom bimromav, Hu yaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, ve'imru Amen. Ose shalom bimromav, Hu yaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, ve'imru Amen. Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la la ya la la la, ya la la ya la la ya la la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la la ya la la la, ya la la ya la la ya la la. Ose shalom bimromav, Hu yaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, ve'imru Amen. Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la la ya la la la, ya la la ya la la ya la la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la la ya la la la, ya la la ya la la ya la la, ya la ya la la la, ya la 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 la, ya la la ya la la la, ya la 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 la. Ya la ya la la, ya la 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 la, ya la ya la la la, ya la la ya la la ya la la. 371. We move from our prayer for peace to a prayer for healing and strength and accompaniment and many blessings. If you'd like to share the name of someone that you're thinking of, someone who's on your mind and your heart, you'd like to call their names out, please do so. Then we'll join you in your prayer. (371), the middle of the page. Shem berach avotenu mekor habracha leimotenu. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Mi sheberach imotenu mekor habracha leavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shalema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. So, there's just so much. There's just so much. I'm finding it really challenging to be a learner. I know I talk about it a lot, I preach about it a lot. Here's all of this energy that I think it's so important for us to be a learner. And what I mean by being a learner isn't that everybody has to know all of the different pieces of Torah and the Talmud and Jewish law. Hey, that's cool, that's great. I make a living at it, I'm into it. But I mean really just being open to the process of being a learner, of being open-minded, of hearing another perspective. And there are times, truly, that I would rather wrap myself in this big blanket of myth without needing to be confronted by any new kinds of truths, any of those truths that I was never told. That I can just kind of stay in a cocoon and I don't have to worry about it. But that's not really a reality. Not if we want to continue to grow. And there have been a few things that have been rocking my world these last number of days. One of them is this story of Thanksgiving, my family's favorite holiday, and learning in recent weeks as well that some of our most key leaders of Reform Judaism, rabbis, professors, scholars, teachers who have led the Hebrew Union College Jewish Institute of Religion, symbolic exemplars of liberal rabbis, were actually I can't believe I'm saying this, we're actually engaged in predatory and harassing behaviors toward women, individuals who were LGBTQ plus identifying, people of color, and others. A report came out in these last few weeks, released by the Hebrew Union College itself, for all to see, to my seminary's credit, for all to see, made public, and with calls for teshuvah, with calls for repentance and restoration. And I haven't been able to shake it. Thanksgiving I've been trying to deal with for a long time, but it's hit me harder this year. So how do I manage things that I love and have appreciation for and have given me gifts? And how do I stand on a bima to say how wonderful these things are without sharing some other kinds of light? We are a people, especially at this season, especially this coming week, who talk about the power of light. So we need to share some light. So let's start a little bit with Thanksgiving. Our childhood remembrances of Indians and pilgrims coming together for a shared meal, but in James Baker's book called Thanksgiving, the biography of an American holiday, we learn that the first mention of a Thanksgiving occurs in 1637 after colonists massacre an entire village of Native Americans, the Pico village, and celebrate that victory. President Washington wants to start a Thanksgiving holiday with no relation to those early colonists or any relationship to Indians. But remember, too, that our celebrated Declaration of Independence, lifting up words that all men are created equal, a few lines later referred to Native Americans as merciless Indian savages whose known rule of warfare is undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions. This is how our founders viewed the indigenous peoples of this land as merciless Indian savages. And I have to say, it's not really any different than what Pharaoh said about our people, our ancestors in the beginning books of Exodus. According to Baker's book on Thanksgiving, the sanitized version of the story emerges with new immigrants coming into this country in the late 19th and 20th centuries. And those who had power wanted to define Americanism. So Thanksgiving became what Sean Sherman, who's the CEO of Sous Chef, he says, a fabricated, peaceful description between the colonizers and the tribes, and neglected to mention the amount of death, destruction, and land grabbing that occurs against the first peoples, setting the tone for the next 200 years. Sherman, Native American himself, a well-regarded chef who talks about bringing indigenous ingredients back into Thanksgiving as his effort to reclaim a part of a story of gratitude. Sherman teaches us that a myth was advanced to show how wonderful America was to these new immigrants and what it meant to be a real American. Let's put that in one pocket, one bucket over here. If I go to this other one that I mentioned, I learned in seminary, rabbinical school, from some of the same teachers as Rabbi Deborah Bronstein, our Rabbi Emerita, Catherine Schwartz, our Director of Lifelong Learning, previous rabbis who served this congregation, and some, not all, but some of our leading institutional figures have actually committed crimes of harassment and assault. Others have created unwelcoming learning environments, and still others remain silent. Folks who knew what was going on in a seminary, in our seminary. One of those named rabbis in the report, Alfred Gottschalk, in his obituary, is celebrated for his courage to ordain Sally Priesand, Rabbi Sally Priesand, the first woman to be ordained as a rabbi in the United States of America. He was celebrated as an act of courage and valor, and we learned that he was an aggressor on our campuses to women students. Yes, I said his name. Whether it is about our wider country or our sacred communities, how do we respond to myths that hide the truths that we were taught to hold dear, that were supposed to bring us some level of comfort and security, purpose and meaning? How do we balance this all? I don't think it's enough to cut and run. I don't think that's the right answer. So I'm going to share another one. It's going to start with Maimonides. Maimonides, one of our greatest medieval sages. He wrote in a Sources of Laws called Hilchot Temurah. He says the mitzvot, our sacred laws and commandments, the mitzvot are God's instructions and advice for living and improving our character. And all these matters, which he's referring to as the mitzvot, all of these matters are to help us to overcome our negative inclinations and to correct our traits. Most laws of the Torah are instructions from afar, from the great advisor, I like that term for God, the great advisor, to help us to correct our character traits and straighten our ways. So for Maimonides, one of our greatest of teachers, the mitzvot, these laws, aren't just about keeping order. It wasn't just for us to be following. It wasn't just so that we have a commander and that we are the commanded. It was so that we can learn something, so that we can be reflective. In more modern times, a founder of modern Orthodoxy in Germany. Not a great proponent of Reform Judaism, by the way. His name is Shimshon Raphael Hirsch. And Rabbi Hirsch wrote a treatise of philosophy, of Jewish philosophy, Jewish thought called Horeb. Horeb is a synonym for Mount Sinai, so revelation is coming at Horeb. And in this book, Horeb, he taught that the word lehitpalel, which means generally to pray, lehitpalel, it also forms the word tefillah, which is a prayer. Lehitpalel and tefillah has the same root letters. He says originally it was meant to deliver an opinion about oneself. Lehitpalel is a reflexive verb. So it's not just to pray, it's really, according to Hirsch, to judge oneself, to reflect upon ourselves. He says it denotes to step out of active life in order to attempt to gain a true judgment about oneself, about one's relationship to God and one's relationship to the world, and the world to oneself. In English, we call tefillah prayer, but this word only incompletely expresses the concept lehitpalel, to pray. In other words, to ask for something is only a minor piece of what prayer does for us. Asking for something is a small piece. Praise is a small piece. The fundamental function of our tefillah is lehitpalel, to actually engage in reflection, discernment. Think about where we are, where I am in this world. It's not just to praise, it's to examine, it's to judge, it's to figure out what we consider the truths that need to be present in our world. And it's in this vein that I want to share another teaching. I've been thinking a lot, reading a lot from a teacher named Peter Block. And Peter Block has a book called Community, the Structure of Belonging. And in this book, he explains what he considers to be a restorative community. Restorative community, he says, is activated by language of connection and relatedness and belonging, spoken without embarrassment. It recognizes that taking responsibility for one's own part in creating the present situation is the critical act of courage and engagement, which is the axis around which the future rotates. The essence of restorative community building is not economic prosperity or the political discourse or the capacity of leadership. It is citizens' willingness to own up to their contribution or agency in the current conditions, to be humble, to choose accountability, and to have faith in their own capacity to make authentic promises to create the alternative future. For me, that's one of the best paragraphs ever. And I know it's a hard one to hear. I can share it afterwards if you're that interested. But the idea of humbling ourselves. Usually we hold people accountable only to punish, but it's really more than that. It means that I have ownership over something important, and I want to explore the possibility of a better future together with somebody else. If I was to take his words and put it into religious terms, I would talk about it as tikkun, as healing, as repairing, as restoration, to bring wholeness, little by little, to build wholeness. How can we bring healing to different kinds of traumatic experiences in our country, in our community? And I think we do that. We answer that by speaking honestly, by learning truths, even some truths that we might not be so sure of. By learning more honestly about who Native Americans and indigenous peoples are. By advancing a brave space where we can raise questions and be supported in asking our real questions, gain clarity, journey with greater empathy, and using our power, our influence for the betterment of all. There's just a few ways that we can do that tonight together. I appreciate that you're here listening, if you're awake. And I've never done this before, but I think it's time. I think one small way is to acknowledge that the land where we gather and pray today in Boulder County is within the territory of the Arapaho people. And we can honor Chief Left Hand, the leader of the last Arapaho band to spend their winters in the Boulder Valley. Many people were massacred by the U.S. cavalry at Sand Creek, Colorado in 1864. The survivors were forced out of Colorado to reservations in Wyoming and Oklahoma, where most Arapaho live today. We recognize that the synagogue sits upon land within the territories of the Ute and Arapaho peoples. Further, to acknowledge that 48 contemporary tribal nations are historically tied to the lands that make up the state of Colorado. In our daily lives, let us honor and respect that the Boulder Valley is home to so many people and to other tribes that also lived out their lives here for centuries. Native people of many indigenous nations live here today. And back to that other bucket, to respond to that report from the Hebrew Union College, the way to respond is also to acknowledge truths that some of these scholars their actions make me want to throw up. And we have to hold people accountable. And it doesn't represent an entire institution. And we respond by strengthening our efforts here and building our own plans to advance safety and respect and equity in our congregational community. And we've been working on this past year. We have an SRE task force. We put up information on our website. We talked about a Brita covenant of behavior, of how we hold each other accountable, how we call people in so that this can be a place of restoration, of tikkun, and to build a true community of belonging. I'm thankful this Shabbat and this week for many things. But just like the Native American tribes of this that are inhabiting this country, who have been inhabiting this land for all of these centuries, as they have been teaching that gratitude isn't about one day, it's true in Jewish prayer and ideas and thought too. It can't be reserved to this time in November. If we can only make gratitude contagious, if we can learn to be open, like the wilderness, like the desert that they received the Torah in out in Sinai, if we can break some of those boundaries and containers that restrict what we think is true to what we learned in 4th grade, can we continue to grow and challenge and engage in those acts of tikkun? I hope we can. 586, friends. We move to conclude the bottom of paragraph. On 586, we invite you to rise if you are able for Aleinu L'Shabeach. Aleinu L'Shabeach L'Adon HaKol, L'Atik Gedula L'Yotzei Bereshit, שלא עשנו כוכי הרצות ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך. Page 588. שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסר הארץ, ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו בגובהי מרומים. הוא אלוהינו אין עוד, אמת מלכנו אפס זולתו, ככתוב בתורתו, וידעת היום והשבות אל לבביך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים בשמיים ממעל, ועל הארץ מתחת אין. Page 591. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד. May be seated. Zichronam levracha. May their memories be for a blessing. If you are observing a yahrzeit, an anniversary of one's death, or if you're in a period of mourning and you would like to rise for a moment and share the name of the one whom you are remembering, we invite you to do so. To those names, we share the following names. In the period of Shloshim, those first 30 days, we remember one of the members of our community, Elena Gomez. We remember Carlos Pestana Pereira, the father of Beatrice Pestana Osuna. And Beatrice not only lost her father, but also her mother this month. So we also remember Rosario Osuna and send extra strength to Beatrice. We remember Jonathan Crass, the brother of Stephanie Bryan, and those yahrzeits that we recall for this week that has passed. William Martindale, Rose Bernstein, Uriel Gurshev, Boris Melamed, Sidney J. Miller, Stephen Lee Harris, Jeanette Beer, Wallace Spector, Cecilia Scheichman, Gisela Garrett, Robert Moed, Arthur Cohen, Carl Berner, Naum Elovich, Arthur Eston, Doris Rabinowitz, Jackie Stoutenberg, Michael Margolis, Ruth Levinsky, Miriam Ween, Arthur Silverman, Rose Panner, Robert Schwartz, Faye Wolf, Lawrence Satin, Dwight Victor Galloway, Marion Schiff, Etta Holzman, Hannah Wolkowski, Morris Jack Wolk. Kaddish is on page 598, and we invite you to rise if you're able. 598. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabba, v'alma divrach hirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon v'yomechon, v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, Ba'agala uvizman kariv v'meru, amen. Yehi shmei rabba mevarach leolam olmei maya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yita'aleh v'yithalal shmei d'kurusha b'rechu, le'ela min kol berachata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran bi'alma v'meru amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shamaya v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'meru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel v'meru amen. May the source of peace send peace to all who mourn, comfort to the bereaved here and everywhere. Let's all say amen. You can be seated for a closing prayer. Let's turn to the bottom of page 653. Page 653. Before we conclude, just to remind folks that, of course, lots of things continue to happen around here. We do hope that you will check out the website for all of the different ways that we're encouraging people to connect online and on land for Hanukkah, the celebration of light, our opportunity to build connections with other Jewish communities around the world. And we have different members of our leadership team, of our board, who are going to be leading blessings and lighting candles on Zoom and such. So all through the week, we have plenty of opportunities for you to connect with. And next Shabbat, on Friday night, during Hanukkah, as we've always done, we are going to bring people into this space and have light our Chanukiot. In past years, it's been nice to be able to fill up a room with a few hundred people, and the fire didn't always make me so comfy. But we're still going to figure out how to manage to make that happen next Shabbat. So whether you're online or going to be in the sanctuary, if you come, we'll encourage folks to bring their Chanukiah. And we also want to just remind you, please do check your emails. We had an announcement this week come out about how one of our homes is going to start to be opened up in the next few weeks to an Afghan refugee family. We've been renting these homes for years, previously to typically college students. That wasn't so great, and that's not really part of our mission. And then to folks working with Bridge House and helping people come out of homelessness. And now one of them is going to be going to an Afghan family that has made it safely to Indiana. And soon, next week, we'll be staying with other parts of their community in Lafayette. And soon we'll be coming here. And we're going to ask our community for help, how to support such an effort. So please check that out and take a look. And we hope that... you okay? Oh, look, extras. How'd you know what I was doing? So let's conclude. Page, what did I say? 653 at the bottom of the page. Well-known words always reminds me of gratitude. Eli, Eli, shelo yigamer leolam, hachol v'hayam, rishrush shel hamayim, berak hashamayim, tfilat Adam hachol v'hayam rishru shel hamayim v'rak hashamayim tfilat Adam. O God, my God, I pray that these things never end. The sand and the sea, the rush of the waters, the crash of the heavens, the prayer of the heart, the sand and the sea, the rush of the waters, the crash of the heavens, the prayer of the heart. Shabbat Shalom to you. We encourage you to wish your neighbors a Shabbat Shalom. If you don't know your neighbor, share your name. Introduce yourselves. You don't have to shake hands with anybody. It's okay. But share your name and wish each other well. And we're glad you're here. We made it easy. You can put your books right back onto that cart right over there. And we wish you a good Shabbos, folks.